open this. She had passed that corner every night for 3 years. The Yatai, a ramen stand, had never been there before. The cook was old, the noren faded. The broth was unlike anything she had ever tasted. When she asked the cook how long he had been on this corner, he looked up for the first time and said, "Longer than you have been walking past." The following night the corner was empty, but the old man was in a photograph on her grandmother's wall, behind a Ramen Yatai, dated 1962. Don't stop at any street stalls tonight that weren't there yesterday. It is time for chapter 158. There is a particular comfort to late-night street food that has nothing to do with hunger. The warm light of a yatai on a dark street, the smell of broth reaching you before you have decided to stop, the particular intimacy of a small counter and a cook who does not ask questions. Most late-night yatai are simply what they appear, practical comfort on a cold walk home. But occasionally a street stall appears on a corner that has been empty for as long as you have been walking past it. And the cook behind the counter has been there considerably longer than the corner would suggest, and the broth tastes of something that is less like food and more like time. A woman walked the same route home every night after work, had done so for 3 years, knew every corner of it with the particular intimacy of someone who has moved through a space repeatedly in all weathers and all seasons, which is why the yatai stopped her. A small ramen stand on a corner she had passed thousands of times, a single lantern, a faded noren, the smell of broth reaching her from half a block away. She stood on the pavement and looked at the stall, looked at the corner it occupied, the same corner she passed every night, simply with a yatai where there had been nothing the night before. She walked up to the counter. The cook was old, the particular age that is difficult to estimate precisely, somewhere between 70 and considerably older. He did not look up when she sat at the counter, simply placed a menu before her, handwritten on a small card, the characters in a style that felt older than the card itself. She ordered. He turned to the preparation without a word. There were 2 other customers at the far end of the counter, eating in silence. She did not look at them directly. Something about the quality of their stillness discouraged direct attention. The cook placed her bowl before her. She lifted it. Monje. Not simply delicious, something beyond delicious, something that tasted of a specific memory she could not locate. Familiar in the way of something experienced before she had the words for experience. If these stories have found their way to you, if you find yourself returning to this quiet room, there is something small you can do. Like and subscribe. It tells me, and whatever else watches from this room, that you were here and that you intend to find your way back. If you have a story of your own, Granny is always listening, watching, waiting. She finished the bowl, sat for a moment in the warmth of the stall, then asked the cook, who had still not looked up from his work, how long he had been on this corner. The cook stopped what he was doing, was still for a moment, then looked up. for the first time, and looked at her with the particular attention of someone who has been asked a question they have been waiting a long time to be asked. Said, "Longer than you have been walking past," said it simply, without elaboration, as though this was entirely sufficient as an answer. She looked at him, at the particular quality of his face, the specific way it held its age, paid what the handwritten slip indicated, left, walked the rest of the way home, slept immediately. Shakoi, the dream that followed. Cold in the way of something that came from a depth she had not expected sleep to reach. I wonder if a cook at a late-night ramen stand looked up at you for the first time and said he had been there longer than you had been walking past. What would you ask him next? Would you ask another question, or would you pay and leave? If you have a story of your own, this quiet room has space for your experiences too. Granny is always listening. She visited her grandmother the following weekend. Her grandmother's house, familiar from childhood, unchanged across decades in the particular way of houses lived in by people who know exactly how they want things arranged. She was in the main room waiting for tea when she noticed the photograph. On the wall where it had always been. A street photograph, a busy commercial street, the era clear from the clothing and the style of the shops. And in the background on a corner she recognized, the same corner she walked every night, recognizable despite the decades between the photograph and the present. A yatai, and behind the counter of the yatai, just visible, a figure. Old, in the posture of someone who has been standing behind that counter for a long time. She stood up and looked more closely at the photograph, at the face of the figure behind the counter, then looked at the date written in her grandmother's handwriting in the corner of the photograph's frame. 1962. Danya. That's right indeed. You are still here. Good. Some stories need a witness all the way to the end. I wonder if you found someone from a late-night ramen stand in a photograph dated 60 years ago, would you go back to the corner? She asked her grandmother about the photograph. Her grandmother looked at it with the expression of someone accessing a memory from a considerable distance, said the photograph was from her own childhood, that the corner in it was near where she had grown up, that the yatai in the background had been a landmark of the neighborhood, had been there as long as anyone could remember, that the cook had been old even then, that she had eaten there as a girl, had thought of it many times since, had never been able to find it again after the neighborhood changed. The woman stood in her grandmother's main room holding a cup of tea that had gone cold and thought about broth that tasted of something experienced before she had the words for experience, and about a cook who had looked up and said, "Longer than you have been walking past," and about the corner that was empty again, and about how long longer than you have been walking past actually was. I think about time and street food and the particular way certain tastes outlast the places that made them. My grandmother's cooking. a specific broth from a specific bowl on a specific cold night that cannot be replicated because the place and the person and the moment were unrepeatable. Most tastes like this belong to memory. But occasionally a taste arrives from somewhere that is less like memory and more like the thing itself, still present, still warm, still served by hands that have been serving it since before you were born. And the question of how that is possible is less interesting, I think, than the question of why that particular corner, that particular night, that particular woman walking past after 3 years of the yatai not being there. Monje, some things are served at exactly the right moment, to exactly the right person. I have believed this for longer than most. Another whispered story from Japan, shared quietly here beside the Kotatsu. If you are walking home late and you smell broth from a corner that has always been empty, stop, sit at the counter, order what the handwritten card suggests, eat slowly, and when you have finished, ask the cook how long he has been on this corner. Look at his face when he answers, and if he looks up for the first time, if he looks at you with the particular attention of someone who has been waiting to be asked that specific question, pay what the slip says and leave. Then visit your grandmother and look at the old photographs on her walls. Look carefully at the backgrounds, at the street corners, at the yatai if there is one, and at the figure behind the counter, because what you tasted tonight has been waiting on that corner for longer than either of you has been walking past, and the broth will taste in memory exactly as it tasted in the bowl. Monje, and it will never be replicated, and you will spend the rest of your life walking past that corner on the chance that the lantern is lit again. If this story stayed with you, if the dark or the shadow feels a little closer tonight, you know where to find me. I am always here beside the Kotatsu, watching, waiting. And if you wish others to find their way here too, there is something small you can do, like and subscribe. I would not object. And if you have a story of your own, this quiet room has space for your experiences too. Granny is always listening.